My name is Jack. I'm an architect in a bustling city, a place where skyscrapers kiss the clouds and the hum of life never seems to fade. I've been married to Emily for 20 years. We've lived through the ups and downs that any long-term relationship encounters, but we've managed to stay together without the joy, VJ, and sometimes burden, VDJ, of children. Our life has been a blend of shared dreams, weekend getaways, and quiet nights at home. On the surface, everything seemed perfectly fine. But lately, something felt off. An intangible shift in the air that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Emily and I met during our college days. She was a vibrant, ambitious woman who wanted to make a mark in the world of interior design. We complemented each other perfectly. VGJ, her eye for aesthetics, and my technical expertise seemed like a match made in heaven. We built a life together, both literally and figuratively, crafting our home with care and filling it with memories of better days. Yet, as the years rolled by, the spark that once ignited our passions seemed to dim. Emily had started to stay late at work more frequently, her explanations about tight deadlines and demanding clients becoming routine. I didn't question it at first. Trust was the cornerstone of our marriage, and I had no reason to doubt her. But those late nights became more frequent, and the distance between us grew more palpable. Little things she did began to change. She no longer greeted me with the same warmth. Her laughter seemed more reserved, and her touch, once tender and reassuring, felt distant and mechanical. My work kept me busy, but not so much that I didn't notice these changes. Emily, on the other hand, seemed engrossed in her world. Our conversations dwindled to mundane exchanges about bills, chores, and the occasional social event. I missed the days when we would talk about our dreams and aspirations late into the night, planning vacations we never took, and reminiscing about the good times. It was a gradual process, this drifting apart, and perhaps that's why it took me so long to see it. I was caught up in the rhythm of our lives, too preoccupied with my projects to see the cracks forming in the foundation of our marriage. But once I noticed, I couldn't ignore it. The signs were subtle, but unmistakable. Her phone was always with her, even to the bathroom, and she seemed to smile more at the screen than she did at me. Her wardrobe choices changed too. She began dressing more stylishly, something I hadn't seen since our early days together. I tried to shake off my suspicions, chalking it up to midlife changes and the pressures of work. But the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong gnawed at my peace of mind. It wasn't until one particularly lonely evening that I decided to do something about it. Emily had called to say she'd be late again, a common occurrence now, and I sat in our empty living room, the silence deafening. That night, the doubt that had been lurking in the back of my mind forced its way to the forefront. I needed to know what was going on. For the first time in 20 years, I questioned the fidelity of the woman I had pledged my life to. And that question, once asked, set me on a path I never wanted to tread. The days following that realization were a blur. I tried to go about my routine as usual, but everything felt off-kilter. Emily's late nights continued, and each one deepened my unease. She claimed she was swamped with a big project, but I started to wonder if her job was really the only thing keeping her away from home. One evening, I decided to ask her about it. We were having dinner, VDJ, an increasingly rare occurrence. Emily looked tired, but there was a certain glow about her, a liveliness that seemed out of place given her supposed workload. I set my fork down and mustered the courage to voice my concern. "Emily, you've been working late a lot lately. Is everything okay?" I tried to keep my tone light, not wanting to come off as accusatory. She barely looked up from her plate. "Yeah, it's just this project. The client is really demanding and I want to make sure everything is perfect." I nodded, though her answer didn't satisfy me. If it's too much, maybe you could delegate some tasks? You've got a great team." She sighed, finally meeting my gaze. "I know, Jack, but this is something I need to handle myself. It's important to me." Her words were reasonable, but they did little to quell the storm brewing inside me. I forced a smile and changed the subject, not wanting to push her away further. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, my suspicion grew. I started noticing other things, VDJ, how she would step out of the room to take phone calls, the way she seemed distracted even when she was with me, and how her explanations for her absences became vaguer. One particularly unsettling moment happened on a Saturday morning. Emily had left early, saying she needed to meet a client. I had a rare day off and decided to clean the house. As I was tidying up, I found a receipt for a dinner at a fancy restaurant, dated the previous Tuesday, so one of the nights she had supposedly been working late. The bill was for two. I sat down, the receipt clutched in my hand, feeling a wave of nausea. My mind raced with questions. Who had she been with? Why hadn't she mentioned it? I tried to think of innocent explanations, but none seemed convincing. The seed of doubt had firmly planted itself in my mind. Determined to find out more, I started paying closer attention to Emily's behavior. I watched for any clues that might explain her absences. It wasn't long before I noticed her texting more frequently, often smiling at her phone. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd dismissively say it was a work thing or a friend, but her evasiveness only made me more suspicious. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Emily was slipping away from me, and I didn't know how to stop it. My attempts to reconnect with her fell flat. VDJJ, she was always too busy or too tired. Our once vibrant conversations were reduced to awkward silences and strained small talk. The intimacy we once shared had all but vanished. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself staring at the ceiling, consumed by thoughts of what she might be hiding. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, questioning everything I thought I knew about our relationship. The woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, was becoming a stranger to me. Desperate for answers, I confided in my friend Mike. We had known each other since college, and he was one of the few people I trusted implicitly. We met for drinks after work, and I poured out my worries, hoping he might offer some perspective. Mike listened patiently, his brow furrowed in concern. Jack, it sounds like you're going through a rough patch. But before you jump to any conclusions, maybe you should talk to her directly about how you're feeling. I sighed, taking a sip of my beer. I've tried, Mike. She just brushes me off. I don't know what to do. He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Maybe you should consider the possibility that there is something more going on. But be careful, Jack. You don't want to accuse her of something without solid proof. That could make things worse. His words echoed in my mind long after we parted ways. I knew he was right, but I also knew that the uncertainty was eating me alive. I needed to know the truth, whatever it might be. And so, with a heavy heart, I decided to take matters into my own hands. The next step was one I never imagined I'd take: VJJ surveillance. If Emily was hiding something, I was going to find out what it was. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to keep a closer eye on Emily. The idea of surveillance felt invasive and wrong, but my desperation for answers overrode my moral hesitation. I needed to know what was happening to my marriage, even if it meant crossing lines I never thought I'd cross. I started small, paying attention to her schedule and movements. Emily was meticulous about her routine, which made deviations easier to spot. I noticed she would often leave the house early, claiming she had meetings with clients, and her return times were always unpredictable. I decided to follow her one morning. She left the house at her usual early hour, dressed in a way that seemed a bit too polished for a simple client meeting. I waited a few minutes before getting into my car and trailing behind her. My heart pounded as I kept a safe distance, the city's morning traffic providing a convenient cover. She drove across town and parked near a trendy Caf GC, a place we used to frequent when we first moved to the city. I watched from a distance as she went inside, her demeanor calm and composed. After a few minutes, she emerged with a man I didn't recognize. They laughed and chatted comfortably, the kind of ease that suggested they were more than just acquaintances. I snapped a few pictures with my phone, feeling like a sleazy private investigator. The man was tall, well-dressed, and seemed familiar with Emily. They got into separate cars and drove off, but not before exchanging a hug that lingered just a bit too long. I followed them again, this time to a hotel on the other side of town. My stomach churned as I watched them disappear inside. Unable to confront her directly without more evidence, I decided to check her phone when I had the chance. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but the situation demanded it. That evening, while she was in the shower, I seized the opportunity. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, unlocked. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her messages. What I found was a series of texts with someone named M. The messages were vague but flirtatious, filled with inside jokes and plans to meet up. It was clear that M was the man from the Caf GC. My heart sank further when I saw a recent message. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place? I put the phone back before she finished her shower, my mind reeling. My worst fears were being confirmed piece by painful piece, but I still needed more solid proof. Something undeniable. The next day, I bought a small GPS tracker and discreetly attached it to her car. I felt like a criminal, but the need to know outweighed my guilt. The tracker provided a detailed log of her movements, confirming my suspicions. She often visited the same hotel, meeting M on days she claimed to be working late. The realization was a knife to my heart, twisting with every new piece of evidence. Emily was having an affair, and I now had the proof. I decided to confront her directly, but not before seeking advice from Mike again. We met at our usual bar, and I laid out everything I had discovered. Mike listened intently, his face darkening with each detail. "Jack, this is serious. You need to confront her, but you also need to be prepared for whatever comes next. This isn't just about catching her in the act. It's about deciding what you want to do afterward." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I just don't know if I'm ready to face it, Mike." "What if she denies everything?" "Then you show her the evidence, and you decide what you want for your future. Do you want to try to salvage this, or do you want to move on? Either way, you need to talk to her." Mike was right. Avoiding the confrontation wouldn't change the reality of the situation. I went home that night with a heavy heart, determined to confront Emily the next day. I waited until the weekend, knowing we'd both be home with no work as an excuse to dodge the conversation. On Saturday morning, I made us breakfast, a quiet prelude to the storm I was about to unleash. Emily seemed cheerful, oblivious to my turmoil. As we sat down to eat, I looked at her, trying to see the woman I had fallen in love with, but all I could see was the betrayal. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She looked up, a hint of concern in her eyes. "What's wrong, Jack?" I took a deep breath. "I know about you and Em. I know about the hotel and the texts. I've seen it all." Her face went pale, and for a moment she looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Jack, IVJ. Don't!" I cut her off, the anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "Don't lie to me! Just tell me the truth!" The silence that followed was deafening. Emily looked down at her plate, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't mean for this to happen." Her admission felt like a punch to the gut. I had hoped, irrationally, that there was some innocent explanation, but her words confirmed the worst. My heart shattered, and all I could think of was how to pick up the pieces. I sat there in stunned silence, Emily's confession hanging in the air like a dark cloud. The woman I had shared my life with for 2 decades had been unfaithful, and now I was faced with the raw, undeniable truth. The breakfast we had barely touched lay forgotten between us, a stark reminder of the normalcy we had just shattered. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily wiped her tears, looking more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. "It started about 6 months ago." "It was never meant to get this far, Jack. I swear, 6 months, half a year of lies and deceit." I clenched my fists under the table, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "Who is he, Emily? I need to know." She hesitated, but then sighed, defeated. "His name is Mike. Mike, your friend." My heart sank even deeper, if that was even possible. Mike? The same Mike I had confided in, the one who had given me advice and support? The betrayal was now twofold, and I felt the ground slip further from under me. "Mike? My Mike?" I said, my voice breaking. "You've been seeing my best friend behind my back." Emily nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't planned, Jack. It just happened. We were working on a project together, and it just ... It just happened." I stood up abruptly, the chair screeching against the floor. "It just happened? That's your excuse? Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To us?" She stood too, reaching out for me, but I stepped back. "Jack, please. I know I've made a terrible mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you." Her words rang hollow, and all I could see was the betrayal. I needed to get out, to clear my head before I said something I couldn't take back. "I need some air," I muttered, turning away from her. I grabbed my coat and left the house, the cool morning air hitting me like a slap. I walked aimlessly, the city a blur around me. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and confusion. How could she do this to me? How could Mike do this to me? I had trusted them both, and they had shattered that trust in the most painful way possible. After what felt like hours, I found myself in front of a small café. I went inside, ordered a coffee, and sat by the window, staring out at the bustling street. My thoughts were a tangled mess, and I struggled to make sense of my emotions. I couldn't go back home, not yet. I needed to talk to someone, but Mike was the only friend I had confided in. Now, I couldn't even trust him. Then it hit me. There was one person who might understand VDJ, my older brother, Tom. We hadn't been as close in recent years, but he had always been there for me when it mattered. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number, hoping he was available. "Jack, it's early. Is everything okay?" Tom's voice was groggy but concerned. "No, Tom, everything's not okay. Can we meet? I need to talk to you," I said, my voice cracking. "Of course. Where are you?" he asked, sounding more awake. I gave him the address of the café, and he promised to be there as soon as he could. I sat there, sipping my coffee, feeling more alone than I ever had. The minutes dragged on, each one filled with a painful replay of Emily's confession and Mike's betrayal. Finally, Tom arrived, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. He sat down across from me, studying my face. "Jack, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Tom, it's Emily. She's been having an affair." Tom's eyes widened in shock. "What? With who?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "With Mike. My best friend Mike." Tom's face darkened, and he leaned back in his chair, processing the information. "Jesus, Jack. I'm so sorry. How did you find out?" I explained everything, VDJ, the late nights, the suspicious behavior, the surveillance, and finally the confrontation that morning. Tom listened quietly, his expression growing more serious with each passing detail. "Jack, you need to get out of there, at least for a while. Come stay with me." "You can't stay in that house right now," he said firmly. I nodded, knowing he was right. "Thanks, Tom. I just need some time to think, to figure out what to do next." Tom reached across the table, gripping my shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Jack. We'll get through it together." I left the café with Tom, feeling a small measure of relief. At least I had someone to lean on, someone who hadn't betrayed me. We drove to his place, the silence between us comforting in its familiarity. Over the next few days, I tried to process everything that had happened. Emily called and texted constantly, begging for a chance to explain, to make things right. But I wasn't ready to talk to her. The wound was too fresh, too raw. I needed time to heal, to decide what I wanted for my future. In the meantime, I focused on work, throwing myself into my projects with a renewed intensity. It was a welcome distraction from the chaos of my personal life. Tom was a constant presence, offering support and advice without judgment. Slowly, I began to piece myself back together, finding strength in the routine of daily life. But I knew I couldn't avoid Emily forever. Eventually, I would have to face her, to confront the reality of our shattered marriage. And when that time came, I would need to be ready. Not just for the conversation, but for whatever decision I would make about our future. After a week of staying with Tom, I felt marginally more stable, though the pain of betrayal still throbbed in my chest. Emily's constant messages pleading for a chance to explain had become too much to ignore. I knew that if I was ever going to move forward, I had to face her again and hear her side of the story, even if it hurt. I decided to meet her in a neutral place where emotions wouldn't run as high. There was a small café near our home, a place where we used to go during happier times. It seemed like a fitting location for what was sure to be an emotional confrontation. I texted Emily, telling her to meet me there the next morning. Her reply was immediate and filled with relief. She agreed, and I could almost sense her desperation through the words on the screen. The next morning I arrived early, choosing a secluded table in the corner. I ordered a coffee and waited, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. The minutes felt like hours until I saw Emily walk through the door. She looked fragile, her usual confident demeanor replaced by a nervous uncertainty. She spotted me and walked over slowly, her eyes pleading for understanding. "Hi, Jack," she said softly, sitting down across from me. "Emily," I replied, my voice flat. "Let's get straight to the point. I want to know why. Why did you do this? She took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't have a simple answer, Jack. I never meant for this to happen. Mike and I were working closely together on a project, and it just escalated. I felt a connection with him that I hadn't felt in a long time. Her words were like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. And you couldn't talk to me about it? You had to go behind my back with my best friend? I know it was wrong. I was confused and lonely. We've been drifting apart for a while, Jack. I didn't know how to bridge that gap. Lonely? I snapped, unable to contain my anger. You think I wasn't lonely too? You think I didn't notice the distance between us? But I didn't turn to someone else, especially not your friend. Emily looked down, ashamed. I know, Jack. I know I messed up. I should have come to you. I should have tried to fix things. But I was scared. Scared of what? I demanded. Scared that I wouldn't understand? That I wouldn't care? Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought you wouldn't care. You've been so focused on work, and I felt like I was losing you. And Mike? He was there. He listened. He made me feel wanted. Her admission stung, but it also made me realize how deeply our problems ran. It wasn't just about the affair VJ. It was about the years of unspoken issues and unmet needs. Why didn't you just tell me that you were feeling this way? Why didn't you give me a chance to fix it? Emily looked up, her eyes red and swollen. I thought I could handle it on my own. I didn't want to burden you with my insecurities. And then when things with Mike started, I felt trapped. I didn't know how to stop it without making everything worse. So you just kept lying, I said, my voice cold. You kept sneaking around, thinking I would never find out. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, and I hate myself for it. I hate that I hurt you. But Jack, I still love you. I never stopped loving you. Please give me a chance to make this right. I looked at her, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and confusion. How? How can we possibly fix this, Emily? The trust is gone. You broke it. I know, she said, her voice desperate, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild it. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. Just please, don't give up on us. I sat back, feeling the weight of her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give our marriage another chance. But the other part, the part that had been shattered by her betrayal, screamed that it was too late. I need time to think, I said finally. This isn't something I can decide right now. Emily nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. Take all the time you need. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. And that I love you. I left the CAF-GC, my mind in turmoil. Emily's pleas for forgiveness echoed in my head, but so did the images of her and Mike together. I didn't know if I could ever get past it. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to sort through my feelings. Tom was a constant support, offering advice but never pushing me in one direction or the other. One evening, as I sat on Tom's porch, watching the sunset, I realized that I needed to confront Mike as well. He had been my friend for years, and his betrayal was just as painful as Emily's. I needed to hear his side of the story, to understand why he had done this to me. The next day, I called Mike and asked him to meet me at the same CAF-GC. He sounded nervous, but agreed. When I arrived, he was already there, looking as guilty as Emily had. Jack, he began as soon as I sat down. I'm so sorry. I know what I did was unforgivable. I cut him off, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. Why, Mike? Why did you do it? You were supposed to be my friend. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't have a good answer, Jack. Emily and we connected. It started innocently enough, but it quickly spiraled out of control. I should have stopped it. I should have respected our friendship. You're damn right you should have, I snapped. You knew how much she meant to me. How could you do this? I don't know, he admitted, his voice filled with regret. I was weak, and I let my feelings get the better of me. I never wanted to hurt you, Jack. I hate myself for it. Hearing his remorse didn't make it easier. If anything, it made it worse. These were two people I had trusted implicitly, and they had both failed me in the most profound way. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said finally. But I needed to hear you say it. Mike nodded, tears in his eyes. I understand, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I am truly sorry. I left the CAF GC, feeling drained, but also a strange sense of closure. I had confronted both of them, and now it was up to me to decide what to do next. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least I knew the truth, and that for now would have to be enough. The days following my confrontations with Emily and Mike were some of the hardest of my life. Despite their apologies, the betrayal gnawed at me constantly. The anger and hurt were consuming, and I found myself struggling to find a way to cope with it all. Tom, always supportive, suggested therapy, but I wasn't ready for that. I needed something more immediate, more visceral. I needed to take back some control, to feel like I wasn't just a victim. One night, while I was scrolling through old photos of Emily and me, the idea struck me. Emily had two close friends, Sarah and Linda. We had known them for years, and they were like family to us. They had always been supportive, always there for Emily during tough times. And now, as I stared at a picture of the four of us smiling at a barbecue, I felt a surge of anger. They must have known about the affair. They must have covered for her. The thought of them being complicit in her betrayal infuriated me. The next day, I decided to act. I reached out to Sarah first. She was single, and over the years there had been a few moments when I sensed she might be interested in me, though nothing had ever come of it. I sent her a casual text, asking if she wanted to grab a drink and catch up. She replied almost immediately, eager to meet. We met at a bar downtown, a place neither Emily nor Mike would frequent. Sarah looked genuinely happy to see me, her smile warm and inviting. As we talked, I found it surprisingly easy to slip into a familiar, flirtatious banter. The drinks flowed, and soon we were laughing and reminiscing about old times. As the night progressed, I made my move. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. Sarah, I have to be honest. I've always enjoyed our time together, and I've been feeling a bit lost lately. I could use a friend, or maybe something more. She looked taken aback, her eyes widening slightly, but then she smiled, a hint of something more in her gaze. Jack, I've always thought you were a great guy. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about this too. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of drinks and whispered conversations. By the time we left the bar, I had convinced her to come back to my place. As we walked to the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that what I was doing was wrong, that I was sinking to a level I didn't want to be at. But the anger and need for revenge drove me forward. We spent the night together, and for a brief moment, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. I had struck back, taken something for myself. But as the morning light filtered through the curtains, the reality of what I had done hit me. I felt empty and ashamed, no better than Emily and Mike. Sarah left that morning with a promise to see me again, but I knew I couldn't keep that promise. I had used her to fill a void, and it hadn't worked. The anger and hurt were still there, just as strong as before. Still, the drive for revenge wasn't satisfied. I reached out to Linda next. She was married, but her husband traveled frequently for work, leaving her alone most of the time. I knew she had been having marital issues, and I decided to exploit that vulnerability. I texted her, suggesting we catch up over coffee. She agreed, and we met at a CAF GC near her place. Linda was more reserved than Sarah, but as we talked, I could see the cracks in her composure. She was lonely, and I played on that, showing her the same attention and affection I had shown Sarah. It didn't take long for her to open up to me, and soon we were meeting regularly, our conversations growing more intimate. One evening, after a particularly heartfelt conversation, I kissed her. She hesitated at first, but then kissed me back, the loneliness and need evident in her response. We ended up back at her place, and I spent the night with her. As with Sarah, the act brought no real satisfaction, only a deeper sense of emptiness and guilt. In the days that followed, I realized that my actions had not only failed to bring me any real comfort, but had also complicated things further. Sarah and Linda both believed that our encounters meant something more, and I knew I had to put an end to it before things spiraled out of control. I couldn't keep using them to fill the void left by Emily's betrayal. I called both of them, explaining that I needed space and time to sort out my feelings. They were hurt and confused, but ultimately they agreed to give me the space I needed. The relief I felt was short-lived, as I was left to confront the reality of my actions. Revenge hadn't given me the closure I sought. Instead, it had only added to my guilt and confusion. I realized that the only way to truly move forward was to address my own emotions and decide what I wanted for my future. With a heavy heart, I packed my things and moved back to my own place. The house felt different now, filled with memories both good and bad. I took a deep breath and decided to face Emily one last time, to lay everything on the table and make a decision about our future. When I arrived, she was waiting for me, her eyes red from crying. "Jack, I've been thinking about what you said. I know I hurt you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right, but I need to know if you're willing to try too." I looked at her, my mind swirling with everything that had happened. The affair, the betrayals, my own misguided attempts at revenge. It was all too much. "Emily, I've done some things I'm not proud of. I tried to hurt you the way you hurt me, and it didn't work. We've both made mistakes, and I don't know if we can fix this." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand, Jack, but I still love you, and I'm willing to fight for us. Can you at least consider giving us a chance?" I took a deep breath, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. "I need time, Emily. We both do. Maybe with time and therapy, we can find a way to rebuild. But right now, I don't have an answer for you." She nodded again, her expression a mix of hope and despair. "I'll wait, Jack, as long as it takes." I left the house, feeling both a sense of closure and a lingering uncertainty about the future. I had taken steps to reclaim my life, but the journey was far from over. Only time would tell if Emily and I could truly rebuild what had been broken, or if it was time to move on and start anew. The months that followed were a slow, painful journey toward healing. Emily and I agreed to separate temporarily, giving each other the space we needed to reflect and decide what we truly wanted. She moved in with a friend, while I stayed in the house, grappling with the ghosts of our shared past. Therapy became a crucial part of my routine. I found a counselor who specialized in marital issues and personal trauma, and through our sessions, I began to untangle the complex web of emotions that had been suffocating me. The anger, the hurt, the guilt VDJ, they all needed to be addressed if I was ever going to move forward. Emily also sought therapy, and we started attending joint sessions. These meetings were intense, filled with raw honesty and painful admissions. We confronted the issues that had driven us apart, and though it was agonizing, it was also cathartic. For the first time in years, we were communicating openly, laying bare our fears, insecurities, and regrets. Despite the progress we made in therapy, the wounds were too deep to heal completely. As much as we tried to rebuild, the foundation of our marriage had been irreparably damaged. After several months of effort, we both came to a heartbreaking but necessary conclusion. It was time to let go. We filed for divorce amicably, determined to part ways with as much grace as possible. The process was painful, but it was also a relief. The constant tension and mistrust that had plagued us for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a bittersweet acceptance. We divided our assets, sold the house, and went our separate ways. With the divorce finalized, I made the decision to leave the city that had been the backdrop for so much heartache. I needed a fresh start, a place where I could rebuild my life without the constant reminders of what had been lost. I found a job in a smaller, quieter city, and packed up my belongings, ready to begin anew. The move was both liberating and terrifying. I didn't know anyone in the new city, and the prospect of starting over at 40 was daunting. But as the days passed, I began to find solace in the unfamiliarity. The new job was challenging and fulfilling, offering a welcome distraction from my personal struggles. I immersed myself in my work, gradually finding a sense of purpose and satisfaction. I also made a conscious effort to pursue the hobbies I had neglected during my marriage. Photography, hiking, and reading became my outlets, helping me rediscover parts of myself that had been overshadowed by years of stress and conflict. I joined local clubs and groups, slowly building a new social circle. The people I met were kind and welcoming, and I began to feel a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. One evening, while attending a photography meetup, I met Claire. She was vibrant and full of life, with a passion for the arts that matched my own. We struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, hours had passed. For the first time since the divorce, I felt a genuine connection with someone new. Claire and I started spending more time together, exploring the city, sharing our love for photography, and discovering common interests. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, without the baggage and complications that had weighed down my marriage. Claire was understanding and supportive, giving me the space I needed while also encouraging me to embrace the future. As our relationship grew, I found myself opening up to her about my past, including the painful details of my marriage and the betrayal that had ended it. Claire listened without judgment, offering empathy and reassurance. Her kindness and patience helped me heal, and I began to see that it was possible to find happiness again. A year after moving to the new city, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that I hadn't experienced in a long time. My career was thriving, my hobbies brought me joy, and I had built a new life surrounded by supportive friends and a loving partner. The pain of the past hadn't disappeared, but it had faded into the background, allowing me to focus on the present and future. Emily and I remained in touch, our interactions cordial but distant. We both acknowledged that the divorce had been the right decision, and though there were no hard feelings, we understood that it was best to keep our distance. She had also moved on, finding her own path to healing and happiness. As I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out over the city that had become my home, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal, the anger, the hurt vigil, they had all been part of a painful process of growth and self-discovery. I'd emerged from the darkness stronger and more resilient, with a clearer understanding of who I was and what I wanted from life. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I had learned to trust again, to love again, and to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. With Claire by my side and a new life unfolding before me, I was ready to step into the next chapter, grateful for the lessons of the past and excited for the adventures yet to come.